This experience was shared by Shravan and it took place in Bangladesh. I had a friend in Dhaka. Whenever I traveled there, I would stay at this friend's house since he had a big apartment with plenty of room. Also, my parents were friends with his parents, so they had no concerns. I was visiting this friend one summer after we both graduated high school. We were excited about going to the same college in Dhaka. One afternoon, we went outside to visit another friend who lived in the same neighborhood. We visited a theme park with him and came back home around evening. When we entered the apartment, we caught a whiff of this horrible smell coming from somewhere inside. It was like the odor when a rat passes away and rots, but worse somehow. Along with his family and some neighbors, we searched the building for hours but we couldn't find any source for that smell. But it seemed to be coming from the water pipes in the bathroom. We checked the water tanks on the roof and asked all the tenants of the building, but no one had a clue. After an entire night of searching, we were forced to give up the search and just lock up all the bathrooms, which reduced the smell. We tried to ignore it as best we could. About 3 to 4 days later, the landlord of the building received a phone call.
Hello?
The caller informed him that the first floor of the building had a dead body that was stashed in a container in the bathroom. The caller did not identify himself. The first floor was right under my friend's apartment. A tall, middle-aged man lived there. I personally saw him around the building a few times. This man used to work for a major medicine manufacturer in Bangladesh. His job was to travel the country going door to doctors' offices and convince them to prescribe the drugs produced by his company to their patients. He had been missing for the last few days, but no one thought that was weird because his profession required frequent long-distance traveling. The landlord knew this meant big trouble, so he contacted the police immediately. The police came and broke into the first floor and found a horrible mess in the bathroom. They found a body of a young woman that was wrapped up like a ball, and tied by ropes into a big container. It had been rotting in that wet and damp bathroom, so the flesh was bloated and falling off of the body. We found out later that she was a 10th grader who was pregnant with the medicine man's child. He decided to kill her and the baby to save himself from society and the law. Police never found out his whereabouts, as far as I know. The sight of the body was so gruesome that police had to clear the area to transport it out of there, in order to save any children from a lifelong trauma. That's when all these mysterious incidents started happening around that building. I stopped going to this friend's house for a while after the body was found. But when I went back after a month, we could still smell the same horrible stench coming from the pipes sometimes, but only after dark. I asked my friend why there was still that smell and if they cleaned everything up. He said that they did wash the bathroom and the entire building up very thoroughly. My friend himself helped clean the floor in the bathroom. The neighbors were all very shaken by the incident and many decided to move out of their apartments. A few months after that, a family from out of town, who had no idea about the history of the building, moved into the first floor where the girl was killed. But this new family couldn't stay there in peace for long. They complained to the landlord that when they slept they felt like there was someone very smelly in the house around 2 to 3 o'clock in the middle of the night just walking around. They couldn't see anything but they could feel the presence. The landlord asked them to stay the month and then they could leave. He agreed to give them back their security deposit. This family didn't make it the whole month and left within 20 days, it was that bad. The landlord realized that he wouldn't be able to rent that apartment to a family who will stay there for long. So he decided to turn it into a dorm for students who will go to a nearby college. He reasoned that young college students are brave and are willing to put up with more, and also that they will only stay there for a few months out of the year and then go back home for the vacations. The building became an object of fear for all the neighbors, and they would avoid walking in front of it unless in broad daylight. There was a tea stall in front of the house, and we used to go there often enough that we built a friendship with the owner. I remember one time when we were there to get some tea and snacks, the owner shared something with us that clearly disturbed him. He said that one day after morning prayers, when he made his way from the mosque to the stall to open it, he saw a young girl waiting there. He was confused as to why someone was there so early in the morning. So he called out to her, asking her what she wanted. And the next second, that girl was there no more. This really spooked him. We assured him that it was normal for this area and that he shouldn't be too worried. A few minutes after he shared that story, a boy came to the stall and greeted us. He mentioned that he moved into the dorm very recently. But he was concerned about the stories he was hearing from the neighbors and housemates about weird things they experienced there. We didn't want him to be scared, so we just told him to focus on his studies and move on after the exams. The next afternoon we heard from the landlord that first thing in the morning the boy packed his belongings in his suitcase as fast as he could and ran away. We were curious as to what happened, so we collected his number from his housemate and called him. He said he was in the train station, waiting for the next train back home. Me and my friends decided to visit him in the station to talk to him and find out what was really going on. When we met him and asked him what happened, he told us a bone-chilling story. The boy told us that the evening before that, he came back to his dorm from a private tutor he and his classmates were going to. They were all preparing for the upcoming state exams. He took a shower, had dinner, and sat down with an energy drink at his study table for an all-nighter. He barely got past the first page in the textbook, when the light suddenly blew out with a loud noise. Remembering all the stories about this building at that moment gave him goosebumps. The boy noticed that he could also smell something rotten in his room. He said that he almost felt like there was someone else in the room. But he told himself that it was all in his head, in order to gather some courage. He knew he had to prepare for the exams no matter what. Shaking himself off, he went out to the store to buy a light bulb. The boy put in the new bulb and sat down to continue his studying, hoping and praying to make it through the night with no more incidents. As he had started to turn the first page, again like clockwork, the light went out with a whack. He felt really frustrated since this was an exam that would be very important for his future prospects. Out of sheer dismay, he put his back to his room wall. He started sobbing and slowly slid down to a seated position on the floor, with his head in his knees. He found himself regretting ever moving into a dorm. How would he explain this to his parents who had so much hope in him? That was when something changed in the room. That rotten odor he could smell earlier became stronger and was now coming from somewhere inside his room. What he saw next literally froze his blood. Right on the wall opposite him, on the other side of the room, there was someone there. A shadowy figure was sitting down on the floor with their back against the wall and sobbing, the same as him. He couldn't tell whether it was a male or a female as it was really dark. He let out a loud scream and ran out of his room towards his housemate's room. He banged on the door but no one responded. So he ran down to the street and away from the house and stayed out the entire night. The next morning when the sun was out, he came back, packed up his things, and rushed out of there to the train station. This was not the last story we heard about that building. The landlord was forced to turn it into an office that would only operate during the daytime, but still the office workers reported weird things happening around that area. And that strange, rotten smell, it never went away.